Hello, this is Jackie Moore and we're continuing with Chapter 2 in Principles of Marketing. Chapter 2 is all about strategic marketing planning. And as you can see from this slide, essentially we're going to accomplish these three objectives. Essentially there are three levels of planning that must be done in any business, regardless of whether the business is a large multinational corporation or even a small service-oriented retailer in Missoula, Montana. First of all, strategic planning is done by the top level management, which might be the owner or founder of a company. And we'll go through each of those 5 steps in strategic planning subsequently. In addition to strategic planning done at the top level, each functional area of business also must have its own functional plan. And because this is a marketing class, we will be going over marketing planning. But there also must be an HR plan, there must be an operations plan, there has to be a financial plan, and in this class the function that we're talking about is marketing. And then finally, at the operational level is when the day-to-day implementation of the plans is done. We'll focus primarily on strategic and functional planning in this class. The purpose behind strategic planning, as you can see on this first bullet, is essentially to match the firm's resources and capabilities to the opportunities in the marketplace. And in this sense, this resource allocation decision helps to prioritize what's important, and clearly in order to prioritize, it also implies that it tells the firm what it's not going to be focusing on. One of the terms that we'll be using in this class is called strategic business units. Essentially, a strategic business unit is a division or a line of business that generates its own revenue and also has its own costs associated with it. A strategic business unit as a line of business has its own profit and loss statements. As I mentioned previously, functional planning is accomplished by all functions in the organization. And in this class we'll focus on marketing. Marketing plans are typically 3 to 5 year plans that suggest how the marketing function will help the organization accomplish its strategic plan. These 3 to 5 year plans are also supplemented with annual plans, knowing that the environment changes year to year and so the plans have to be updated. At the operational level, this is when frontline personnel execute the plans. This sometimes is also called tactical planning. What we'll see is that all 3 of these areas have to work together in order for the firm to really accomplish its objectives. And so I like to view this as kind of a hand-in-glove process. The strategic plan is the overarching plan, and then the functional areas underneath that must fit very logically and in a supportive way. As I've mentioned already, SBUs have their own profit and loss statements, and strategic planning is done both at the overall organizational level as well as at this line of business or divisional level. Before we get started here, I'd like to highlight that all strategic planning is guided by a code of ethics, and marketing professionals are no different than any other functional area of business such as accounting. If you go to the American Marketing Association, what you'll see is that there is an ethical code of conduct there that all marketers must abide by. As I mentioned, we're going to go ahead and do strategic planning first. And these are the 5 steps in strategic planning. And we'll go through each one in quite a bit of detail, because what I'm hoping is that after you go through this chapter, you will know all the steps at a fine enough level of detail that you can go out and do strategic planning for an organization that you're interested in. This slide essentially shows how strategic planning works at both the overall corporate or organizational level and also at the line of business level. What you'll see, I like to look at this as an overarching umbrella where the overall organization's missions and objectives guide what happens at each individual line of business. So we have the strategic business units 1, 2, 3, and 4 that have their own mission objectives and strategies, but they have to fit within this organizational mission. And then within the functional areas, as you see here, we're going to focus on the marketing function, which will have its own objectives and strategies, as would all other functional areas of business. Step 1 essentially is to define the company's mission. And what you'll see is that a mission statement should address 3 questions. First of all, what business are we in? We've talked previously in this class about businesses are defined by the customer needs that they meet. And in this particular case, it's very important that the mission be focused on what customer needs are met, and I'll come to the reason why in just a minute. The mission also addresses what customers should we serve. And although this comes later as well in terms of segmentation, targeting, and positioning, a customer focus means that businesses are likely to have different supporting infrastructures if they're going after, say, affluent customers in developed countries compared to less affluent customers in emerging markets. And because this decision of which customers has major implications for how the remaining plans are rolled out, it's considered to be part of the mission statement. The third one, in terms of addressing the mission, is what are the firm's capabilities that are needed in order to accomplish its mission. Now, many people are critical of mission statements. They believe that they're just words on a page, that they really don't mean anything. But a mission that actually is more than words on a page is something that gives motivation to employees and helps make sure all employees, when they're working for the good of the organization, are motivated and we get synergies from that shared value. As I mentioned previously, it's important that companies focus on the customer need being met rather than the product that they sell. As this slide shows, if Xerox had defined its mission in terms of copy machines, it would have been quickly obsolete because today we do so much digital sharing. So it's important that missions be stated in terms of the customer need being met, which, as you see here, is document solutions. We've talked about this word myopia previously. Myopia essentially means narrow-sighted in terms of a person's vision. And the way that's applied to marketing is that it is possible for missions to be very narrow in scope, and oftentimes that means that they're defined in terms of the specific product that they offer. And as we've seen with Xerox, it's much better to define the mission in terms of the customer needs being met. Sometimes this is called the Goldilocks principle, in the sense that when we say the mission should not be too broad nor too narrow, it's like Goldilocks and the Three Bears. She didn't want the porridge too hot or too cold. This sense of just right is very elusive, but the only way we know when a mission is not too broad or too narrow is when we kind of consider the options on either side of what we've got. The second step in strategic planning is to conduct an analysis of both the company's internal environment and its external environment. This is sometimes called a situation analysis. The internal assessment is focused on identifying the firm's strengths and weaknesses, and will provide quite a bit of detail on all the factors that should be systematically addressed in this internal assessment. The external environment is focused on opportunities and threats that are outside of the company's boundaries. And because these external opportunities and threats are outside the company's boundaries, they generally affect all companies in an industry and sometimes multiple industries. The 6 factors in the external environment will be discussed in detail in Chapter 3. Let's go ahead and look at the internal environment first. Factors that are inside a firm are controllable by managers, and these controllable factors then can be changed because managers have control over them. This slide shows the 7 factors that must be systematically evaluated in the firm's situation analysis of its internal environment. These are presented in your book, and I would like to highlight the page that they're on because I don't want students to miss how important these factors are. They are mentioned in a paragraph on page 47. The first factor in the internal environment pertains to people and human capital. Are the personnel and employees well trained? Are they up to date? Do they have good morale? This can pose strengths or weaknesses for the company. Physical facilities refer to the plant and equipment. This can include manufacturing facilities, and if it's a service organization, it can also relate to the physical image that the facility presents to customers. Financial stability, cash flow, debt to equity ratios, all of the things that you've learned in your accounting classes can also pose strengths or weaknesses. Particularly if a company wants to grow, they need to have some financial resources to draw upon. These next 3 bullets, corporate reputation, quality products, and strong brands, are all factors that a firm controls by virtue of the actions it undertakes, as well as the investments that it makes in developing quality products. Companies that don't stand behind their products or that engage in decisions that have harmful effects are responsible for tarnishing their corporate reputation. Companies also use information technologies to help accomplish their mission. In this sense, IT can be state-of-the-art and an asset in helping the company gain competitive advantage. But to the extent technologies are old or dated, then they cannot be relied upon to the same extent. One factor that's not listed in your book that is critically important relates to a company's relationships with its partners, relationships with suppliers, relationships with distribution channel members. A company selects its partners, and it selects the nature of its agreements with those partners, and those can also pose critical opportunities and threats. Think of today's mobile telecommunications. What we're seeing is that the strength of various platforms, such as the Apple iPhone compared to any Android-based phone, is a function of the partnerships with developers, with other companies who use that technology to help deliver their missions, such as the Nike chip that's embedded and you can access your running metrics with your phone. So partnerships are critically important. Corporate culture is the final factor in the internal environment that we'll talk about, and I prefer the word organizational culture. Culture refers to values, norms, and beliefs that influence people's behavior, and different companies have different types of organizational cultures. It's important when you go to interview for a job that you actually assess these values to make sure that you feel comfortable working in the environment that you've selected. Okay, the factors in the external environment, as I've mentioned, these are factors outside the firm's control, and in that sense they affect many companies in the industry. 5 of these factors are listed here, and we'll provide the definition and examples of these in Chapter 3. The important point about the external environment is that marketing managers are looking for trends, which are changes in these factors. The example here shows that concerns about the obesity epidemic in the United States has posed an opportunity for some companies that are able to make changes, but it's also posing threats to other companies, such as food marketing for children. The outcome of Step 2 in strategic planning is called a SWOT analysis, where SWOT stands for strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. After doing a systematic evaluation of all the internal and external factors, a company should summarize the most critical issues in their SWOT. This presents a summary of what a SWOT might look like for a well-known company, McDonald's. The third step in strategic planning is to set clear objectives. These objectives are both set at the overall organizational level as well as at the SBU level. Good objectives are specific in the sense that they have a particular task that guides people's behaviors that can be measured. This might be achieve a 15% ROI, return on investment. They should be measurable so that we know how to assess whether the goal is being met. And ideally, goals should be attainable, and sustainable means that we'll be able to achieve them over the long term for long-term success. One thing that's missing here on the objectives is that they should also be time specific. If we want a 15% ROI, do we want that at the end of year 1? If we're a startup, that might not be very realistic. Maybe year 3. The other point about objectives is that they should also give a starting point. It's one thing to say we want a 15% ROI at the end of year 1. If our current state of affairs is that we're at a 2% ROI, that's going to be a very different type of objective than if we're currently at a 14% ROI. So in addition to what you see here, objectives also should be time specific, and they should have a benchmark for the starting point. Where are we starting from? I'll go ahead and conclude the first podcast for Chapter 2 at this point. We will give examples in class of the steps that we've already covered.